Ja, hallo, liebe Freunde des Destillierens. Heute begrüße ich euch mal und wir haben hier den Francesco von Reigen. Das ist eine Sake-Manufaktur in Berlin. Und diesen Podcast machen wir auf Englisch, weil der Francesco, der ist Italiener und da ist sein Englisch natürlich besser, euer Italienisch wahrscheinlich nicht so gut, deshalb meint sowieso nicht. Deshalb machen wir das mal auf Englisch. Aber ich freue mich, Francesco, that you are here. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And sorry for my English and not German.
That's no problem. I think many can speak and listen to English and understand English, and we will try. We will
All
try.
right. All right.
No problem. Okay. Francesco is, one of a team of four who are producing sake in Berlin. And Francesco, maybe you can tell us why you started this, why you start sake making in Berlin.
Yeah, so there are a few factors. So the main thing, or like let's say where the sparkle started was because me and Sebastian, which is one of our founders, we met in Japan, and we tried one specific sake that we really liked. So having spent quite some time in Japan, I tried a lot of different sakes, but most of the time I got also the feeling that they all taste the same, or like that the differences are so subtle that it's hard to understand like what is like where's the difference in the making and in the taste. So I think it takes time and training if you really want to be like very very deep in the Japanese, like let's say classic sake. But the one we tried was something completely different. It had a much bolder flavor, had acidity, and that's something that really spoke to us, to our, let's say, European taste in a way. And then we said, okay, wow, this is also sake. So this was the very first thing when we actually thought sake could be much different than what we had known before. And actually, we later went to work and train at this brewery, which is called Terada Honke, in the prefecture of Chiba, north of Tokyo. And there they have a very interesting tradition, like of a craft of like making sake still with a very old kind of a hands-on approach. And later, when we came back to Europe, we started experimenting, like taking inspiration from this experience and from this brewing style, trying to really pursue our own take on sake and like expression of flavor, which is understandable by let's say wine drinkers, or like people that are with a European background and a European taste, and they don't need to be necessarily trained in sake to get a feeling for what we do, so that was our, let's say, the beginning of our project, and then there is the rice factor, which is like so the rice is coming from my family farm in Italy,
Oh,
and
okay.
so we had direct access to good quality rice. And this was also saying, okay, we have access to this rice, so this is already like a sort of a premium ingredient, because it's also a craft company and a small production, and it's very dedicated to farming like something very good. So we had access to a very nice ingredient, and this also somehow shaped the philosophy of our production, which is, okay, we make sake in Europe, and we want to have a European flavor. We want to have European ingredients, and we want to kind of introduce them to a European market without having this feeling of, okay, oh, sake is just the Japanese, or these people are just copying the Japanese. Of course, we take inspiration, we take techniques from there, but we really want to go our own way, and that was very clear from the beginning. So the choice of of this specific rice as main ingredient was one of the core factors. Um,
Okay.
yeah.
What is the difference, Francesco? Um, I know I read a little bit about sake before, and then I noticed that they have a special rice for the sake where the starch is very much increased, and then they
Mhm.
polish the rice so that only the starch is
Yeah.
there.
So
What about your rice? What is the difference?
yeah, I can explain. So first thing, like you need to consider that in Japan, because of their like very old sake tradition, they chose specific varieties of rice just for sake brewing. And this is similar to what happened with I don't know, like grapes just for winemaking. Like a lot of
Of course.
varieties are not like eating grapes, but are just dedicated to winemaking. So in Japan, they did select a few varieties of rice that are used just for the purpose of sake making. So this is a first thing, and the second thing is also the starch. So there is a one key feature of rice which is normally used for sake, which is this a white core of starch at the inside the rice grain. The Japanese call it shinpaku, and it's the point is that like if you would polish the rice more, which is what the Japanese actually do, they really like to polish more the grain, meaning that you're left only with this core of starch. And when you do this process, you're actually excluding the other elements that are in the rice grain, that are like proteins and fats that are more on the other side, and you are left with just like this very, let's say, more pure starch content. Uh, and this leads to more refined, polished, clear flavors. But on the other hand, yeah, if you don't polish, then you're left with a lot of extra elements, and this creates a bolder flavor. And this is actually what we do. So our
Ah,
rice is
okay.
not like polished to a higher degree than table rice, like normal rice. According to the Japanese scales, this would be like a 90% polishing, where the 100% is the brown rice. So the raw, let's say raw brown rice. And then we remove a sort of like, yeah, let's say 10-15%, which makes it like suitable for eating as a white rice. But we don't over polish it, meaning that we are left with extra flavors that come
Okay.
from these ingredients, like proteins and fats that are around the starch core. Because this variety specifically that we use is called Carnaroli, which is considered one of the best rice varieties in general, Italian varieties, I mean, and it does have this same core of starch at the center of the grain. So we find a similarity in like with the Japanese sake rice because of this core of starch, which is also there. So all in all, this type of rice is suitable for what we are doing because of many uh, because it does have some characters that actually match the production of sake and the koji making and the fermentation later. So
What kind of rice is this, Francesco? Is this risotto?
yeah,
Risotto
it's a
rice?
risotto
Ah,
rice.
okay.
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
That's
And can you, for our viewers, is it possible to get this rice or just buy risotto rice wherever, or
well, I
is it
mean,
then
this rice specifically that we use, like, so the variety is named Carnaroli. Maybe we can write it later, and so to make sure that people get the right one. And then specifically from this, from my farming company, this I can also like we can link it maybe later.
okay? Oh, perfect.
But yeah, I think in general, this variety is well diffused. I think is one of the most farmed in Italy because it's sort of the golden standard for risotto, let's say. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
good.
This the
So
the
it's
best.
the highest
Yes,
quality of
yes, yes,
risotto rice.
yes, yes,
Okay,
yes.
perfect.
Yeah,
And you use it for sake. Very good.
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
yeah. Okay.
I don't see the contradiction there. I think we are making it like transforming it into something valuable and beautiful, and also I think what I like is that maybe, I mean, we'll talk about this in a few minutes, but we make quite a few different products, but all of them are made with the same rice, like they all start from
Fantastic.
the same. So it's very beautiful to see that actually with this one ingredient, basically, we can achieve quite different results according to, recipes, brewing techniques, and aging strategies. So I love to see a variety of expressions that we can actually achieve from just this one ingredient. I think that's quite remarkable.
Okay, maybe we can just start with the
Mhm,
process of making
mhm,
the sake.
yeah,
Okay, now you have the rice. It comes in a big bag or something.
mhm.
How do you start?
Yeah,
What is the
so the
first
very
steps?
first thing is the washing. So the rice
Okay,
is always washed. We have a small like Japanese rice washer. Otherwise, you can wash by hand if you take like I don't know a bigger strainer, and you wash with cold water, and you need to shake it. You need to move it around. So while you do this, you remove some of the extra, let's say, powder starch which is around the grains as a result of the polishing. And for example, this is something you would never do when you make risotto, because when you make risotto, you want to have also this extra starch like
okay.
in the cooking water, so you get a nice texture. But for sake making, we always wash the rice, and that's a very important thing. So wash with and actually shake it so that you get really clean running water afterwards. And after that, we soak it, meaning like the
Okay.
rice is into cold water at least for 24 hours, like overnight, or like we wash it the day before and then 24 hours later we can use it after the
So is
soaking.
it
So
like is it like really okay? There's a difference if you talk, for example, about the whiskey, then if they make the malt, then they
hmm
have the malt only a certain amount of water. But
hmm
you put the rice really into a big bucket, and then
yes,
there's the
yes,
water above the
yes,
rice. Yeah,
yes,
it's
yes.
fully covered. It's fully covered
Yes,
in water.
it's a
Okay.
principle similar to what you do when you have beans and you want to cook the beans.
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
So the grains, they reabsorb some water, so the moisture content of each grain gets higher. And so if you try to cook the beans that haven't been soaked, it's a very difficult process and doesn't really lead to good results. So you need to think about it in a similar way. Of course, the rice is not as hard as the dry beans, but the idea is the same. And then, so after the soaking, there's the cooking. And the cooking in sake making is all the time steam cooking. So the rice is
Okay.
not cooked in the water, but it's cooked above the water. So we have a tank where we have like boiling water underneath. Then there is like a grid, and then we have a big net with the rice inside. So the steam is rising from the boiling water through the rice, and then it goes up. And this is also a very important point, because if you cook the rice in water, it gets really soggy, it gets too moist. It breaks down, and it's not really what you need. When you cook by steaming, the rice gets in a very chewy kind of a texture, but
Okay.
it's not. It doesn't melt. It doesn't break, and it's a very important step to actually nail the steaming time and everything connected to it.
Is it possible if you have a home brewer,
hmm
they don't use so much
hmm
of the rice. Could they use a rice cooker?
The rice cooker doesn't. I mean, if you have the rice steaming option, yes.
Aha,
But if
okay.
you have only a rice cooker where you cook the rice in the water, this
Ah,
doesn't work.
it's not working. Okay.
It's very important that you cook the rice via steam. So actually, the easiest way is when you have a rather big pot, you put water in, and then you put like a sieve or something inside,
Yeah,
or with a small net, and the rice in there, and then you let the steam through. That's
perfect.
actually the best idea. Yeah.
Okay, and how long do you steam it?
I mean,
Does
the
it?
steaming itself is roughly 1 hour time,
Okay.
but we count 1 hour since the steam is actually rising through the tank, and since we deal with well, depending, but let's say from 50 to 100 kilo of rice during the steaming, it does take time for the steam
To
to,
go
to
inside,
actually
yeah.
go all the way through. So the
So it's
whole steaming
actually it depends on how much you are doing, and then the home
yeah.
brewer will maybe in 30 minutes is finished, and
No,
but if you
I
have a
mean
certain amount,
1 hour steaming time is okay. I think the
it's okay.
important thing
Okay.
is to understand when to start counting. And the moment that you
Okay.
start counting is actually when you see that the whole steam is going through your rice.
Okay.
Yeah. And that
Thank
moment
you.
you can
Mhm.
cover and count 1 hour. That's fine.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very good.
And so
Mhm.
after the steaming, the next step, which is really the key process, is the koji making.
Okay.
So I don't know how familiar your audience is with koji. Maybe I can give a very brief introduction to koji. So koji is a mold, or better, a fungus, which comes from Japan and has different strains. But the important thing from koji is that it has an enzyme that can break the starch of the rice into sugar, which can be fermented.
Okay.
It's called amylase. And it's so let's make a comparison with beer for easier explanation. So beer, you have malt, right? So the process of malting is actually the same in a way, because malting is making the sugars that are in the barley available for fermentation. So if you don't have the malt, you can't actually make beer because there is sugar, but you can't access it. The
Yes.
rice fermentation is the same. So we do have sugars because rice is made in mostly of starch, but you need to unlock these sugars because before you can actually ferment. And this fungus, this koji mold, has the power to do that.
Okay.
And to make it available, you actually cultivate it on your rice. So when the rice is steamed, then we have a dedicated incubation room where we carry
Okay.
the freshly steamed rice, and then the rice is spread, and then we have some spores. Like we buy the spores of this fungus directly from Japan in this case, and we
Okay.
inoculate. Yes, yes. You can source them also in Europe. There's
You can
specifically,
get them in
yeah,
Germany, for example, also.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. From Austria, there is this fermentation culture website in Austria. We can
Okay.
link it maybe. And they actually import from Japan also, but they then resell in Europe. So, and actually smaller amounts also for home production. So it's convenient. And then yeah, so the rice is spread, is inoculated with the spores that go all over, and then they take over of the rice. This process takes 2 days, so it's 48 hours of incubation at 30 to 35 degrees.
Okay. So
Uh,
you have to make sure that it's actually good temperature. Get a good
yes,
temperature. 34 to 35, yeah?
they
So
say
it's
30
really
to 35,
it's warm.
depending a little.
It's warm.
It's warm.
Okay.
It's warm and humid, and
Mm.
there are different phases of this incubation. I don't want to go too much in detail because it's really a topic on its own. But we have a chamber, we have a room that we built where we can actually control the temperature and where we can work with this koji making phase. And the important thing here is that we need the koji for the enzyme that I mentioned before, but koji is also very much responsible for flavor. So the way
Okay.
you work with the koji is a very important to also make sure that you end up with a beautiful sake, because yeah, you want to have it as because it's a technical element like this enzyme, you need it, but you want to have it nice because of the flavor. So it's very important, I think, in the whole traditional Japanese crafts where koji is used a lot, but the sake makers are the ones that are most uh, picky and precise when making koji, because they um, know how much the flavor of the final product is affected by the koji quality. So
Yeah.
that's
So,
very
but
that's a
there's a point you mentioned. So usually, really Japanese people eat the koji rice. It's not only sake making, no? You can eat also
well,
the koji.
koji is used in a lot of products. I mean, to eat directly
Okay.
the koji, I think it's not really so
It's
common, but
not.
it's used.
Okay.
It's used in a lot of products. It's used it's used in the miso. It's used in the soy sauce. It's used in
Okay.
the amazake, which is like a sweet, uh, sweet combination of rice and koji and water. Um, So there are many preparations that are actually traditional in the Japanese cuisine that use rice koji as a base. So it's very integrated in the food culture of Japan, like this koji. But you don't really eat it on its own, even though it's actually nice. But you don't kind of eat straight koji. This is
But the rice, for
uncommon.
example, you could eat if the rice is already fermented with the koji.
Yeah,
It's
you can
also
eat it.
you can eat
It's
the
nice.
rice. Huh?
It's actually it has a beautiful taste. So the taste reminds the main thing that you connect to it is the chestnut
Chestnut. Oh,
chestnut
okay.
flavor. It's actually beautiful taste and flavor and perfume.
Mhm.
And
Interesting.
so when we have the koji, then we
Yes.
have our key ingredient. Then the next
Okay.
step is to create a fermentation mash. And the fermentation mash is a combination of this koji rice and other rice, because then the koji will
Ah.
take over on the other rice and dissolve the starch, or let's say break down the starch into sugar. And so the sugar is then available, and then the fermentation can take over.
Francesco, the other rice you add, so you start with a small batch of rice and then add
Yeah.
koji, let it
Uh-huh.
ferment, let it change starch
Fermented.
into
Yeah.
sugars.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all incubated. The fungus
Uh-huh.
is everywhere. And
Mm-hmm.
then you add normal rice. But this normal rice is also soaked in water or steamed, or is
Yes,
it
it's
just
also
add
no,
raw?
no, no. It's also washed and
Also
soaked
steamed.
in water. Yes,
Yeah,
and
okay.
washed, soaked, steamed, and then combined together with the koji
Hmm.
rice and the water. And this
Hmm.
is creating our it's called moromi in Japanese, is the fermentation mash.
And
Uh,
how much, for example, parts of new rice do you add? You have one part of the koji, and then how much can you add?
this is actually up to us or up to
Ah,
you. Like
okay.
it's really part of the recipe, because here
Ah,
differently
okay.
than in winemaking, we have recipes, and the recipes are based basically on the different ratios of the three key ingredients. So koji
Uh-huh.
rice, normal rice, and water. So the ratio of these three elements is determining a lot of what comes after, like in terms of flavor,
Uh-huh. Okay.
thickness, texture, and all of it. So when you make a sake with a lot of koji and rice, you end up with a very rich product, like flavor, but also the texture is like rather creamy, thick, and smooth. Like it's a very rich feeling when you drink it. Then on the other hand, if you use like more water, less koji, less rice, you have like a fresher, little
Ah,
more
okay.
like let's say straight profile, flavor wise, but also texture wise. So it's up to us. It's yeah. So you can have a very solid ratio with, I don't know, 1 part koji, 2 parts rice, and 2 parts water, for example. I don't know. I'm
Okay.
just saying
You
like
can
a
start
very
with this. You can start with this
yeah,
and try.
or 1 part koji, 1 part rice, 2 parts water, and that's really like a very thick mash, like where you have the same amount of rice and of koji rice and normal rice. But yeah, these are kind of solid ratios that you can play around with. Yeah, for example. Hmm.
Hmm. Interesting. And then you, after the 2 days where the koji is formed, where the koji
Hmm.
is produced, then you add the rice, and then you have to wait again.
No, I mean, well, there are different techniques for the creation of the fermentation mash, but the way we brew, we actually add all in one shot and create the
Uh-huh.
moromi, the fermentation mash. So the rice, yeah, we need to wait for 2 days for the rice to be colonized by the koji mold. But once that's ready, we can already combine it with the rice that has been like, washed, soaked, and then steamed, and the water.
Okay.
And then other techniques, they would call for multiple additions of rice, koji, and water over like 1 week. Let's say you do like 1, 2, 3 additions. That's the most common
Ah, okay.
technique. It has like 3 additions. But we don't. We brew all at once. And this means that we are, um, again, pursuing bold flavors. So when we brew in this way, it means there's a lot of elements that are available all at the same time. So when you add things a little more slowly, the whole process goes a little slower, and there's more time to downgrade the starches and the other elements and ferment a little more slowly. But we add all in at once, so the fermentation goes like really intensely, and it does produce um, bolder flavors at the end, because we play with this not just with the starch, but as I said, also with the other elements that come from the unpolished rice. And this is another extra style pursue to brew all in one shot and get a bold result out of it.
Yeah, there are so many varieties. This is actually where then the recipes comes in. That's the same
Yes.
in wine industry. In the wine industry, there's also some which only use the wine, the grape juice, then they use the grapes with the juice and so on. There are so many varieties, and then the product is changed, of course.
You can play around a
Mm.
lot, of course. Like
Mhm.
as you say with wine, you can choose like skin contact, no skin contact, how long on the skin, and
Yeah,
press or not press, and like so these are the small details that really in the end create
make
your
the
craft.
difference. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
okay. But
yeah.
when you say fermentation, then you add also into, also when you have the koji, then you add the rice, the water,
Mhm.
and you need a certain temperature, and then you have to add yeast.
We don't we
You
let it
don't
happen
add
like
yeast.
spontaneously. Yeah,
So where's the yeast? In Berlin.
it's it's in the air, but there is another step. I didn't want to make too complicated, but
Okay.
we actually create our brewing water by soaking the rice for much longer time. So we, as I said, when we make koji, we we wash and soak for 24 hours, and the next day we steam. But actually, the other rice that we add in the mash, we wash, but then we soak for up to a week in the water. And there is also a small amount of cooked rice inside. This is actually triggering spontaneous formation of lactic acid bacteria in the water. And this
Okay.
lactic acid bacteria, they really create a good ground for also wild yeast to take over.
So the wild
And
yeast is actually already in the rice. It's
yes,
on the
yes,
skin of the
or
rice.
like as a result of like having the lactic acid in the water, and also like I have the feeling that the more we brew, the more it gets like steady, like the situation. But yeah, so you create like basic conditions for this yeast to take over. Yes, and this is a
So
very
you
old
actually,
technique of like
okay.
creating the lactic acid spontaneously in the water is a very ancient brewing method that almost nobody is using anymore, because actually a lot of industrial sake making is even pouring chemical lactic acid in the brewing water. So
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
And Francesco, is it, but it's always working, or sometimes you have also, yeah, okay, it's not working, the yeast is not
Yeah,
coming, or
there is a risk
can happen,
involved.
yeah,
There is a
can
risk
happen.
involved, of course. Yes, yes, yes.
But for
But
the home
if
brewer, he can also use yeast if he likes,
yes,
yeah? He just,
any, of course, you like wine yeast or specific sake yeast, and yes, of course. I mean,
okay.
when you combine these elements, rice, koji, and water, the koji will start downgrading the rice into sugars, and then at this point, any fermentation can happen. So any yeast can like feed on the rice and create alcohol. So yes,
Do you look for the right temperature from this
yeah,
mixture? Do you
yeah.
keep it at a
I
certain
mean, at the
temperature?
very beginning, you can like let it rise a little bit. You can, use room temperature is fine, or even warm it up a little bit, because to encourage like yeast activity. But then as soon as you see that the fermentation is healthy, you want to cool it down. So we do
Okay.
have a system for temperature control, and we have a big like a cooling cellar where we can actually have our tanks inside. And this makes it. This is actually a key factor in sake making, like the control of temperature. And traditionally, sake is only brewed in winter in Japan because of the low temperatures that actually help control the fermentation, so they don't
So it's slow fermentation,
yes,
actually.
yes, it must be. It must be. I mean,
Okay.
it must be for a matter of quality and flavor at the end. You know, of course, you can ferment like at super high temperature, but the
Yeah,
result
okay.
is not good. Yeah.
But then you just pump everything in the air, yeah,
Yeah,
from the fermentation.
you lose a lot. So you do really need to have a temperature control, or like, you know, if you make it in a pot, put it in the fridge, you know, for example. That's a very basic technique,
You
but
put
it's
it in the
important.
fridge like this cold?
Yes, yes, yes.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. I
Because
mean, we work
usually
with
when I make my fruits or something, then it's
mm,
usually said 18 Celsius, 19 Celsius.
we work around like around from 8 to 12 degrees or so.
It's
So
like beer.
it's yeah.
Some of the beer,
See,
yeah,
of the kind of a low
untergärigen.
fermentation.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
That's very interesting.
that's the
Okay,
range. So cold fermentation, yeah.
that's
And
interesting. Very good.
then the other key step comes in, which is the pressing, or like the so this is also a thing that actually we invested in quite a lot, is the fact that okay, you have this fermentation mash, which is very thick, you know, because the rice is actually downgrading over the time, and you have all this solid parts of it, and you need to extract the liquid. You know, you need to separate the lees or the sakekatsu from the liquid, and these requires specific tools. So the way we work, maybe I can also attach a picture like later of this machine that we built. So the way we work is also traditionally done in Japan, but we built a machine here for this. But it works like this. You need to imagine like a kind of a big basin, like a tank, but not a cylinder one, but more like a flat, like a horizontal one. And there is a grid inside,
Okay.
uh, and a space between the tank walls and this grid. And then we transfer the fermentation mash into bags that have a specific like micron kind of a thread
Mesh, yeah.
or
Hmm.
fabric, yeah. And so we fill the bags with the moromi, with the fermentation mash. Each bag can fit around 5 liters, and then we make layers of these bags. So this is why the tank is actually kind of a horizontally made, and we create layers of these bags with like the fermentation mash inside, and then we apply pressure from the top.
Hmm.
And by doing this, we are extracting the liquid and letting the solids trap inside the bags.
So you
And
already have a clear product which is running out, yeah?
it's not entirely
Not
clear, but you remove 95% of the solids. Like, I mean, you are
okay.
left with some very smaller particles or much smaller particles, but you remove a lot. Uh, and this is, I say this is important because when I was homebrewing, I really struggled with this point. So there are many ways you can do it, like at home with, you know, I don't know, cheesecloth or something. So you need to have some fine fabric, and then you can just use like I don't know, a funnel with cheesecloth on top, and then you put your fermentation mash and you let it like drip. Um, but
But yeah, then you
when
lose a lot of product, no? Because it's not
ah
pressed.
well, but that's how it is. Like if you really want to have a nice product, there's no real way. I mean, of course, if you can apply pressure, you maximize
Y-
the yield of
You
what you
could
get.
you could use a fruit press maybe, like a Apfelpresse
But
for the apple juice
yes,
or something,
so
the
I
special
wanted to
press.
come exactly to this point because when homebrewing, we also use like a wine press, you know,
Okay.
like the classic one with
Hmm.
the wooden kind of a basket. The real problem there is that if you want to use these Japanese bags, they are all like vertical, they are, and then you apply the pressure from the top, but you can never really uh, create enough pressure there. So this is why our machine, which is based on
It's
a
better.
Japanese model, is horizontal, because then you maximize the contact of the bag surface with the grid itself. And by doing this and then applying the pressure like evenly from the top, you are really getting out what you need to get out there, and
Okay.
and also without stressing the product too much, because we apply pressure, but it's not like crazy high pressure.
Yeah.
And this is a very important step, and this is why we invested in building a machine here that could actually do this specific
Press.
production
Yeah,
step,
because
which is
you want to drink the result. You want to drink.
Mhm.
It's already no, it's not finished maybe, but that is the sake. For
Yeah.
example, when I think about myself, when this channel is also about the distillation process,
Sure.
then it might be very interesting. Like when I make a whiskey, then there are two ways: on grain distillation or without grain distillation. So
Okay.
if you use on grain distillation, so the grain is inside the still, then there's also more bold flavors which come out. But there's the possibility or the risk of burning the product.
Okay.
So
Okay.
then you need a special equipment which is mixing all the time, because it's
Okay.
also heated. And not everybody is a favor of this. So you can use also press to get then. Yeah, I think there's a Japanese product. No? If you don't have sake, then it's also sake distillation. No? There's a special
Well,
name for it.
well, so I would like
Shogu
to shochu. We can talk about
shochu.
this in a minute. I would like to
Yeah.
make one step back and do like a very short explanation of what comes after the pressing.
Of course.
Because,
Okay.
as I said, when we press, we filter out most of the solids, but not all. So what happens is that not all of the sake is never a complete perfect fermentation, meaning there's always some residual sugar in the final product. Because differently than wine, where you have only sucrose, which is entirely fermentable, the sugar which comes from the dry starch is more complex, and there are some
There are
elements that are
some
actually
sugars which are not fermentable, so to
not
say.
fermentable, and some actually by choice you also might decide to leave in the product.
Okay.
And what we do, we treat the products differently after the pressing phase. And I would like to introduce actually two products that we do here, just to also because this explains a quite interesting variation. So these are sparkling sakes.
Okay.
And to achieve the sparklingness, we use a sort of a pet nut style. So it means that as soon as we finish pressing, we bottle the products immediately, because when we bottle them, there are still these micro sediments inside that will keep fermenting in the bottle, and this creates a natural carbonation within the bottle. And actually, in one case, which is this one with the purple label, we even re-add some of the fermentation mash to make it cloudy on purpose. So this is also a Japanese
like a milky,
milky, a little bit. It's not that thick, but it is a milky. It has a milky like side to it. While the other one, we want to have it clear. And actually, what we do with this one, we use a champagne technique. And so after the second fermentation, we flip the bottles, and we let all the sediments in the cap. Then we freeze the cap, and then we disgorge and refill and close.
So much work.
So much work, but the
So
result
much
is
work.
like this is like a clear, beautiful like sake.
Yes.
So you see, it's all clear. while in this case, sorry, but these are these are water bottles. These are just sample bottles, so this
Okay.
doesn't count. Sorry, but
Okay.
in this case, where we bottle with the sediments, you have, if you flip, you will see like a very kind of nice cloud of sort of milky elements. But then when you drink it, the texture is still like rather smooth. But the point I wanted to make is that when we bottle stuff, which is directly after the pressing, we have this chance of let it ferment in the bottle. And we take this as a part of our production technique for the sparkling products that we make. And as I said, one then
Like
made
a champagne,
clear and
like a Sekt,
yeah,
Sekt
sort
champagne.
of like more of a pet nut,
Mhm.
let's say. But in this case, then we use the champenoise technique to remove the sediments, so the result is clear. While in this case, we want to make it on purpose cloudy, and this is called nigori, or according to the Japanese style, to have it like slightly cloudy and milky.
Yeah.
So on
By the way, Francesco, you also not only sell these products in Berlin, you sell it in Germany.
yes,
And if somebody is interested, we put a link in the description
yes,
below, so
absolutely.
you
We
can
have the
order it with
website.
the
People
Reigen
can try, of course.
manufacturer.
Yes.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, the products that we want to have like still, so not sparkling, we actually age them all the time for a bit. The aging phase also incorporates like a racking phase. So we store in at cold temperature, and we let these finer sediments like, rack down. So like
Okay.
deposit on the bottom, and then we take just the clean part out. Um and then also we can play around with aging conditions. So this is our like signature still sake, which is a rather thick recipe. So it means the flavor is rather bold and rich. But this goes just in stainless steel tanks, and we age it all the time for around 2 or 3 months, and we play around a little bit with the temperatures to achieve a certain level of development that we are aiming for, which means
Okay.
like a kind of nice thick roundness, but still like also very fresh hint at the end. But of this version of this cycle specifically, we also make a barrel aged version. So this is the barrel aged version coming from the same style. And in this case, we got like old barrels from winemakers, and
Okay.
we started experimenting like aging wildly, I would say, meaning like the barrels are not completely full, so there's a lot of oxygen involved, and there is a very nice development. So we like to push also on this oxidized like side. Uh, um, so the oxidation of sake is intriguing, and we were really happy with this results that we made. There
May I ask what kind of barrels do you use from the wine
oak,
industry?
like we for now we just got like French oak barrels, but used by
French
winemakers
oak.
before. Yeah, but
Yeah. But
so
what kind of wine?
so
Like a sherry or port or
no, there
just
were
normal wine?
white wines.
White
So
wine.
they
Okay.
didn't have,
White
yeah.
wine. Okay.
So but the barrels didn't have much like very intense like toasted hints anymore. So they are more subtle in
For
the
you,
like
important is the oxidation. So,
yeah.
so the process, what the sake can use the oxygen and can
Hmm.
react in the barrel, because
Yeah.
it's not like a closed environment like a glass
No.
or in the stainless steel.
We
Hmm.
want to have the oxidation. So I think that we benefit from this oxidation of like the um which comes from the barrel. And as I say, the barrels we use are not entirely full, so there is like quite a lot of voluntary exposure to oxygen. And this brings like a nice evolution from the basic product. So the basic product is a little more like let's say, yeah, a little less complex, but still like already rich and quite round. But what we get with the evolved or with the age version is really sort of maximize this evolution level, and then you get into a little different direction with I don't know, dry fruit,
Okay.
and like, but still, one element that we really try to incorporate in our sake in general is acidity, which is not normally found in sake. Like for the Japanese, not necessarily a good factor, but we want to have acidity, and this goes back to what we discussed before, to this like technique for the production of lactic acid, because from that point on we already have some acidic elements in the mash, and we really wanna keep this like all the way through the process. So there is a voluntary like pursue in acidity, which means that even in the products that are like more aged or more complex, we all the time try to keep a kind of fresh finish that comes with the acidity or a slightly bitterness and some notes that are not entirely this thing of like being I don't know, a cherry like like or like a Porto or sherry, and this wines that
Mm,
are like very round but with little acidity at the end. Yeah. So
that's interesting. How long
yeah.
did you how long did you age the in the oak? Do you age
I mean,
only
we
months,
had
or
well,
you
only a
all
few months. I mean, we made different
okay?
experiments, but we had very good results with as little as, I don't know, like maybe 4 or 5 months, something like this.
Okay.
Already quite impressive evolution there. So, which means we
Mhm.
can age, but not necessarily we need to extend this for too long, which is
But
also convenient.
for myself, it's very interesting with the acidity, because then in the distillation process, it's the same. If you have the acidity in the final product, like in the rum, for example, or in the whiskey, with the acids, you can use then the flavors start.
Hmm.
It's very important if you use oak. Then the oak can change the acidity and form new flavors. So it's also a way of it's interesting, because then I will think, or I start to think that this will be a way to go if you just make a distillation, that you have a like a product what you have, not
Hmm.
like a clean product like what you said. Well, the most of the sake industry is using a very
Yes, yes.
clean sake, but you need a sake which has a rich flavor profile, which you can transfer into the distillation. After the distillation, you have a better product.
I mean, this goes, yeah, to come back to what you were mentioning before. Then we have this experiment here, this shochu that we made in collaboration with
Okay.
a Berlin distillery. So the distillery is called the Freimeister Kollektiv. They're also Berlin
Okay.
based. And so shochu is like more of a general name for the Japanese like schnapps, like distilled alcohol. But what is important here is this kasu tori. Kasu is the name for the tresta, for the leftover of sake, the solid leftovers. And yeah, kasu tori means like I mean shochu made with the kasu, with the tresta.
So it's on grain,
And
actually. So you use the whole product and then
we
distill
used
it.
actually the discard, like it's like when you make a grappa out of the skin,
Ah, they
like the
use the
pomace.
discard.
Yeah, it's like the wine skin, the grape skin, because we did harvest, we did get the sake out of this, so we didn't use like the full mash, but just the clean part of it. And then we took the sakekasu, which is this product that you can use also in the kitchen a lot. It's traditionally used in Japan in kitchens to ferment vegetables or to cure like meats or fish. So there's a lot you can do with it. But this distillation comes only from that. So not from the full mash, but just with
But
this
is it
more
not
like
dry? But if you
no,
press
it's
it, if
quite.
you
We press it, but it's not entirely dry. There is still quite
okay,
a lot
moisture
of moisture.
inside.
Yeah, and I
And
think before the distillation, they even diluted a little bit there, so they
okay,
re-added a little bit of water. And in this case, we also, because we had also some older kasu, older leaves, and we aged them just to see what would happen. And actually, they age very beautifully because they still are rich with like enzymes and nutrients, and they become almost like a miso, like very rich and beautiful. And so this distillation process was made using both fresh and aged lees. And the result for me, I mean, I'm not really an expert into schnapps, but I like flavor wise, I really like it, because at first you have a more of the fresher part, but then you have this more kind of roasted dark finish, which is very intriguing, which I think maybe comes from the aged elements of the ingredients we use. And this is also a nice way of like recycling the
Yeah, of
the
course.
byproduct or the discard product. So was a nice experiment, and I hope we will get to it again.
And
Yeah.
then but you can also use the whole sake. Is it also used the product sake to make soju?
I don't think so.
In Japan, I mean, not.
I don't think
Is it
so.
used?
No.
No?
I think normally in Japan, shochu is made out of like, I don't know, potatoes or,
Okay.
barley or this kind of things. Yeah.
But
So
with koji. But with the koji.
not necessarily. Or I think they create like a fermentation mash using like, as I say, potatoes or sweet potatoes. Actually, that's the main ingredients. It's called satsumaimo in
Okay.
Japanese. It's like a red sweet potato. And I think that's the what is mostly used for making this shochu product. But then, I think it's now like more coming into the tradition and this thing of using the discarded like the sake solids. I'm not really sure if there are makers that actually create a fermentation mash only from rice just to distill it. Theoretically, it is possible, of course, but to my understanding, it's not really a common practice.
Okay. Your product, what you just showed us, how much alcohol content has it?
This is 25.3.
Okay.
So we
Okay, it's not
diluted
so
to
much.
this point. We made different dilution tests with the distiller guy, and we came to this point because it seemed like the best, actually. Flavor, alcohol, everything was kind of nicely balanced. I think also around 25 is the classic of shochu, the classic like
Shochu.
shochu, shochu.
Okay, shochu. Good. Very nice. Perfect.
Yep.
Yeah, and as I said, everybody should try your products. I will
Of
also
course,
try.
if they will,
We have
they
to arrange something.
Yes.
Very good.
Absolutely.
It's
Yes.
really nice. It's really nice that you showed us through the process. Do you have plans for the future? Do you have plans for new products already?
I mean, I think right now we are really focusing on consolidating our production and be like steady with the products we have, because this is also very important in our, let's say, growth phase right now. So I think that has the priority, and then we are also doing like, I mean, all the time some R&D in the background, also regarding non-alcoholic products, which are interesting right now. We are working on that side as well, also rice-based. But that's part of our R&D at the moment. But for the sake, we're really trying hard to be consistent and create like products that are like deliver what our customers are getting now used to have. And I think that's also a very important phase to consolidate what we are already doing.
Yeah. So if you like to help them, then you buy a bottle and you get the flavor.
That would be awesome.
You get to try
That would be awesome.
and they will be happy. That would be nice.
Of course.
Yeah. Thank you that you watched this podcast. We wish you a very nice weekend or week, whatever, and see you at the next podcast. Bye-bye.
Thanks.